Assalamu alaikum. In the first half of Surah al-Layl, the Qur'an's chapter 92, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala classifies people through their personal choices of beliefs and actions during their earthly life into two categories. The first of these is of generous people of taqwa, who are given Allah's promise of His making it easy for them to get all that is good in both the earthly life and the afterlife. While the second category is of unbelievers, typically miserly, who have Allah's promise to make it easy for them to get all the vileness and depravity that they desire in the earthly life, and to make the way easy for them to get to eternal doom. In the second half of the surah, Allah informs us affirmatively about His immense justice and wisdom. First, in thus facilitating for people what they freely choose for themselves, and second, in His punishing those who chose to defy Him despite His signs and warnings, and in munificently rewarding those who strove for His pleasure, especially through their munificence towards others. Indeed, it is upon us to give guidance, and to us belong both the afterlife and the first, in truth. And thus I have warned you against fire that rages, and to which none but him who is most wretched will be hurled and will burn all over therein. Him who disbelieves and walks away, and he will be kept away from it who is eminently blessed with taqwa, who spends of his wealth for the sake of purifying and elevating himself without owing anyone whatsoever favour to repay, rather only seeking the face of his Lord and Master, the one who is most high, and he will most certainly be pleased. As we read the second half of this surah, we need to be aware of the textual threads that connect it to the first half. But to do this, we need first to deal with the three ayahs at the start of the second half, which function as the surah's central pivot, or hinge, if you like. These ayahs make two emphatic statements. The first is that Allah has ensured, is where Allah ensures that every human soul be aware of the right way. Allah ensures that every human soul shall be aware of the right way. Inna alayna lal-huda. And the second one is that every human soul is in need for Allah in every matter, worldly or beyond. وَإِنَّ لَنَا لَلْآخِرَةَ وَالْأُولَى. Based upon these two premises, the warning follows to every human soul against hellfire and what leads to it. فَأَنذَرْتُكُمْ نَارًا تَلَظَّى. That is the well-deserved punishment for those who still willfully insist upon following their own way instead of the divinely prescribed one, irreverently believing that they can do on their own without divine guidance. It is at this point that the divergence is resumed between the two opposite archetypes of people of the surah's first part. Let's remember that the first part draws the distinction between believers and unbelievers by pointing out three differences. Believers give much benefactions. Unbelievers act in a miserly manner. Believers act with taqwa. Unbelievers act with irreverence, indifference, and arrogant reluctance. Believers believe in that which is the best of actions and of divine reward. Unbelievers give no credence to that which is the best of actions and of divine reward. At this level of rendering, the verb yasla is shown with orange markers to bear two denotative meanings simultaneously. Yasla meaning to go into or be thrown into fire, and yasla meaning to burn on every side. The intensifier is used in most wretched in ayah 15 and eminently blessed with taqwa in ayah 17. Attempt to convey the superlative form in the Arabic words al-ashqa and al-atqa successively. Lastly, orange markers of parallel denotation also show that the verb yatazakka, as is the noun zakat that is derived from it, signifies both purifying and spiritually elevating. The initial indeed conveys the two emphatic tools signified within the first sentence. The initial inna and the medial la. Inna alayna lal huda. Inna alayna la al huda. Two emphatic tools, therefore, indeed. Alayna literally means upon us, but it actually means binding upon us. But how binding upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who could possibly impose anything upon Allah? I therefore add, for clarification, the connotative meaning. Indeed, it is a promise that we have made binding upon us. And with the use of the royal we, with its air of extreme grandeur, the implication is understood that we, in our all glorious majesty, have made binding upon us alone, because of the specificity or particularity, as well as the emphasis effectuated by the fronting of the prepositional phrase alayna, upon us. Inna alayna lal huda. Instead of the basic structure, al huda alayna. Now we have inna alayna la al huda. And what is this promise that is binding upon Allah? It is al-huda, to give guidance. It's ensuring that every human with a sane mind has the inner recognition of the right way, the innate distinction between right and wrong, between good and evil, which is the seed for faith that only needs watering with man's own conscious will. وَإِنَّ لَنَا, and to us alone, once again, alone because of the fronted prepositional phrase lana, to us, which is given which is given the effects of specificity and emphasis because of fronting. So, to us alone, in full ownership and sovereign control, belong both the afterlife and the first life, in truth. In truth, like the earlier indeed, replaces the double emphasis that is signified by the initial inna and the medial la. وَإِنَّ لَنَا لَا الْآخِرَةَ وَالْأُولَى. فَأَنذَرْتُكُمْ. And thus, أنذرتكم, I have warned you. And the unidentified plural you within this generalized statement recognizably addresses people in general. And thus, O humankind, I have warned you against what? Against naran talazza, fire that rages, which we understand to be hellfire, that rages forever, with this forever suggested by the use of the present simple tense, naran talazza. So it's a verb that is happening again and again and again, so forever. That is immense fire, and to which none but him who is al-ashqa, who is most wretched, will be yaslaha, will be hurled and will burn all over therein. Only him who kadhaba wa tawalla. That is what characterizes this most wretched creature, who willfully disbelieves and turns his back and walks away. It is the same unbeliever of the surah's first half, who is described there as acting with irreverence, indifference, and arrogant reluctance, and also as giving no credence to that which is the best of actions and of their reward. Thus does the second part of the surah reveal to us the horrific fate of those condemned in its first part. And then the scene shifts to the opposite archetype. And he will, conversely, be kept safe, away from that fire and its raging blazes, who is al-atqa, that is eminently blessed with taqwa, to which I add the commonly understood connotation of taqwa, who in reverential fear and awe of me exerts himself to avoid my displeasure and punishment. And the second attribute of this archetype is that he yu'ti ma lahu, that he always spends of his wealth, with the insertion of always due to the present tense of the verb, as we have said earlier, which implies steadiness or frequent repetition of the action. And with a denotative insertion on acts of goodness inspired by the specification given for this person's intention behind spending, which states that he yu'ti malahu yatazakka, for the sake of purifying himself of sin and of elevating himself above his weaknesses and failings, without owing anyone whatsoever favor to repay, meaning not in return for any previously received favors from others. إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى. Rather, he spends of his wealth on acts of goodness only seeking to please the all-glorious face of his Rabb, his Lord and Master. Rabb, his Creator, benevolent nurturer, sovereign owner, almighty guardian, and only deity, who is modified as the one who is most high, to highlight this believer's utter humility as he spends thus to please his Lord. With a quick look at the description of this archetype in the surah's first part, he's described as being the one who man a'ta wattaqa wa saddaqa bil husna, as giving much benefactions and acting with taqwa, with firm belief in that which is the very best of actions and of their divine reward. And here in the second half of the surah, he is himself described as al-atqa, as being the one who is eminently blessed with taqwa, الذي يؤتي ماله, who's spending generously, again, practicing this best of actions in view of his firm belief in purifying and elevating himself, يَتَزَكَّى, through thus seeking his Lord's pleasure and reward. And that is where the surah embarks with most telling understatement, and he who does so will most certainly be pleased. Indeed, we thus enable people with our all-wise will to get what they freely choose for themselves during their earthly life. And we shall ultimately judge them with our perfect justice and omniscient knowledge for whatever they choose to believe in and to do. For it is a promise that we, Allah, the one and only Lord, Creator, Nurturer, Sovereign Owner and full controller of all existence, in our infinite mercy and our all-glorious majesty, have made binding upon us, for the perfect fulfillment of which we alone suffice, to give guidance to every sane human through the fitrah, the natural disposition of innate virtuousness that we have ingrained in them, with which to make out right from wrong, good from evil, as well as through messengers and scriptures that we have sent them, and through the endless signs and reminders that we have spread everywhere around them in our creation. And we have thus made our human creatures realize, both intuitively and rationally, their fundamental and infinite need for us, for every matter of their earthly life and of their afterlife, as we have made them aware of the reality that to us alone, in full ownership of everything and sovereign control over everything, belong both the afterlife and all that it encompasses, and the first life and all that it encompasses in truth. And thus, after having clearly shown you what is best for you, O humankind, I, Allah, your Lord, Creator, Nurturer, Owner, Subjugator, and only rightful Deity, have always benevolently warned you against hellfire that rages forever, and to which none but an unbeliever, him who is the most wretched of all creation, will be hurled for eternal stay, and will burn all over forever therein. Only him who willfully disbelieves in me as the one and only Lord and Deity and in the last day, and hence turns his back to the truth and walks away from my guidance, and he will conversely be kept safe away from that fire and its raging blazes, who is eminently blessed with taqwa during his earthly life, who in reverential fear and awe of me exerts himself to avoid my displeasure and punishment by dutifully worshipping me alone, by observing what I have ordered, and by staying away from what I have forbidden. For such is a sincere believer in me, who always spends of his wealth on acts of goodness for the sake of purifying himself of sin and of elevating himself above his weaknesses and failings, without owing anyone whatsoever favour to repay through such spending. Rather, it is only that he realizes that all favour is from Allah alone, who has bestowed upon him his wealth and everything good that he enjoys, has blessed him with faith and noble traits, and has thus guided him to spend of what he has benevolently entrusted him with, to finally reward him immensely for it. Hence, he spends of his wealth on acts of goodness, only seeking to please the all-glorious face of his Lord and Master, his Creator, benevolent Nurturer, Sovereign Owner, Almighty Guardian and only Deity. His face that though undeniably affirmed, has a unique sense that befits Allah's glory alone, unlike anything imaginable or discernible by His creatures, Himself and His attributes being incomparable to any attribute of any of His creatures, nor to anything in creation. The one who is most high in exaltation, above and beyond the whole of creation, closeness to whom, through full humility and submission, is the only way to be exalted in both the earthly life and the afterlife. And He who does so will most certainly be pleased with His munificent Lord's favour in the lofty Jannah of endless bliss.